I grew up thinking all of these negative things, saying I couldn't say that I'm disabled until about 3 years ago, because there was so many connotations and so many negative things implied just with the word. It's like, oh my God, don't say that. Like, no, I don't see you as that. And it's like, okay, well, it's just a word. It's inherently neutral. All of these negative things that you're implying with the word disabled has been learned. And I really I believed to my core that I was a burden, that I was not good enough, that no one could ever want to choose me, that I was a freak. I was just like, it was soul crushing.
'Cause everything feels bigger. It's all fire, and little stones become boulders when they're held for long enough. Skipping stones across that river.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. You are listening to Don't Be Afraid to Talk podcast with James. I believe if we are going to affect change, we must go back to the basic, which for me, in essence, is conversations. Talking and listening is key for growth, and I hope our stories will bring us together and we can draw inspiration from each other. Conversation will include topics such as mental and physical health, trauma and its effect, suicidal thoughts, recovery, and well-being. We will continue to raise awareness and offer a different perspective, a mindset or an idea that could inspire you to take charge of your well-being and to grow as a human being. Thank you for joining us today. Today I'm joined by Lauren. Lauren is a trauma-informed breathwork facilitator who is joining me from Scotland. Lauren's here to share her story with me. If you are listening today, have an open mind, and we hope you can learn something from her story. Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you. I can't wait. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm Lauren. I have recently started my breathwork business, which is called Darling Breathe. And I got into that just, I'd say within the last 2 years. Learned about breathwork, studied, and then now I am a facilitator. So I've just moved home to Scotland. I've been traveling for 5.5 years, and just settling back into the grey, rainy weather.
Yeah, because it looks like you went to some, well, when I said exotic, I mean hot places compared to Scotland anyway.
Yes. Yeah, very different. Definitely ticked a few off the bucket list.
Yeah, I still have a lot more traveling to do. And what was the most beautiful place you visited?
It's hard to put them in order. My dream ultimate goal was to go to Bali, and when I did that, it was like, but I lived in New Zealand for just under a year, and New Zealand's really similar to Scotland. Like, the landscape is very green, but I don't know. Sri Lanka is definitely beautiful. Yeah. Although it's pretty cold in winter too. Maybe not as snowy. And then Australia, there's just some absolutely phenomenal sights and things to do over there too. So I'd say my answer is a cop-out. It's too hard to rank them.
Great. I don't know why it's freezing, but ignore that.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Before we get into our conversation today, we're going to play a quick game which is called 1 for 1. I'll give you a word, and you say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Less thinking.
Okay.
Random words. Okay. The first one is flamingo.
Pink.
Stars.
Sky.
Apples.
Bananas.
Kiwi.
New Zealand.
Yellow.
Green.
Great. That's all. So simple.
I love colours.
So simple. Yes. I just like to start with that. So, okay,
Yeah.
let's get going. It just kind of helps me calm down as well. That's why I like to start
Gets
with
you into the room.
Yeah. It's like, what were you asking me these random questions? But,
I like how it was like, just respond with the first thing, then my brain was catching up and was like, why did you say that?
yeah. It's. I think when I do it, when people start thinking more, then you kind of get lost in it because you're like, what am I doing? What am I answering?
Yeah.
Then you start like, what's the right answer? There is no right answer. Yeah. So yes, we get going. So my first question is, can you tell us a bit about your childhood, please?
Yes. So, my childhood, overall, I had a really, like, quote unquote normal childhood, in terms of like my upbringing and my parents, my home dynamic. I don't know if and then I was just going to follow that up with a sentence that just probably contradicts that. But when I was,
it's what it was.
Yeah, I feel like it was normal, but I don't know. Yeah, so when I was 2, I got sick. I got a viral infection. Just run of the mill, could have happened to anyone type thing. And my body had an autoimmune response to the virus. So my body produced too many white blood cells, and then the white blood cells destroyed my peripheral nervous system. So I have a condition called CIDP, and the long-term effects of that can vary from patient to patient. I'm now 31. I still have I have a physical disability. So yeah, my childhood has been through the lens of disability, which was a huge part of my journey to unpack. So that was all sort of kicking off when I was super young, and then I had a few surgeries when I was growing up, and then a few bigger surgeries as I got into my teenage years. And my dad died when I was 12. So it was just me, my brother, and my mum. And then my mum passed away 10 years after that. So I've been like self-parenting fully for almost 10 years. I don't know. I'm not sure when I would make the distinction of what's your childhood or when you become an adult. But
Yeah. When did it start?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But like as a child, you mentioned your condition started very early. Like for you, obviously you didn't know any difference.
Yeah.
You just thought.
Yeah.
Like...
And that's the thing. There is kind of disability within society is such like a varied experience and can also happen to anyone at any time. And I've experienced a lot of like people presuming that I've like had my condition since birth or whatever, but when I haven't, because I haven't had that, but also was young enough to not remember any different. Now I wouldn't change it for the world. Like I've managed to get to that point, and I'm so grateful every day for that. But there was a long time where it was, why did this happen to me? And like, it was just an average day of the week when I got sick, and then my body had this reaction.
Yeah. And as a kid growing up, I'm guessing you spent a lot of your time in hospitals.
Yeah. So that was I think it's kind of my understanding, but I also don't like to make the generalization, but I feel like for a lot of kids, like being different can be like, feel like the end of the world. And if you don't fit in, and if you're not the same as everyone, or if there's something different about you. Like, it can be a lot to, like, internalize and process. And that was my whole life. So I missed a lot of school. I had time away when, everyone's like forming these friendships. And I had really great friends at school, but just that time away in isolation and, hospital appointments and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was, it was definitely a compounding. I don't really remember a certain thing from my childhood where, I was like, cat's out the bag, I'm different, like panic stations.
Yeah.
But it was 100% like a compounding effect of like, like being seen differently, having to be catered for differently, and like really being ostracized in so many ways, or othered is a better word. Like, okay, we'll take the whole class, but we need a plan of action for Lauren. Or like, I was never sort of, I was always like the special case, like just, and yeah, I just internalized that. And then I felt like I became a burden. And, like for me to go anywhere, it was like a whole song and dance. And but yeah, it really, really, yeah.
And so I don't know why this is freezing, but it's okay. It's still recording. It just sometimes
it's not freezing for me, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's only happening for me, so I don't know why.
Okay.
But it'd be okay once it's recording. That's what I'm at. And I'm just going back a bit. CIDP, what does that actually mean?
So it stands for chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. So it's a neurological condition to do with the myelin, which is the covering on your nerves. And the nerve. So basically, when it happened, your peripheral nervous system is what goes from your brain like out to all of your extremities, and your brain sends the message to every part of your body through your peripheral nervous system. You do also have the central nervous system, which is up and down your spine, but it's a little bit different. So the CIDP, the reaction that I had to this virus, completely destroyed the neural pathways. So I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't, like, my eyes would roll about my head. They had to squeeze me to make me go to the toilet. Like, I had no function at all. And then it's funny because I forgot to mention this part, but
you can say it. You can say it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand this because I've never heard of it.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, it is fairly rare, and So basically, I was like really, really, really sick, and then me, the miracle that I am. My brain found a new way to rewire the connections. So now to this day, if I'm hooked up to the machines in the hospital, it says that I'm paralyzed from the neck down, because the old ways that were destroyed have now been rerouted, and the signal is undetectable from the electrode?
The machines?
Yeah, by the machines, yeah. So So as you can probably tell from my arm movements, although again, disability and paralysis varies a lot, I'm not paralyzed anymore. I wear splints, so I have like artificial foot orthosis to keep my feet in a certain position, and I use crutches to get around for balance and strength and things. But made a pretty remarkable recovery.
Strange how,
if I do say so myself.
The machine thinks you're this way, but you're not actually that way.
Yeah, so when I got sick, the pathways that are like meant to be there were all destroyed, but then my body was able to find another way to send the signal that just isn't recognized by the machinery.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know. Oh, yes, the human body can do so much things
Yeah.
that it's like, well,
Yeah. And
and
to know that my body, like, I wasn't really into healing or like spirituality the same way that I am now over the past 2 years. So like to learn consciously like what my body's already done, it's like it's been a wild
yeah, it's like,
ride.
oh my god, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah. And then it's so
And for,
annoying because I
so
forget. I was just gonna say it's so annoying because I forget I can do anything, but I just get caught up and think that I can't.
yeah, because you're kind of being told that you can't,
Oh yeah,
which is
for
a
sure.
big statement to hear.
Yeah.
So now you have to like remind yourself, wait a minute, I can.
Yeah. So just to touch on that with the growing up in the lens or the scope of disability, if I was to ask you, this is just a rhetorical question, but what you know or what you've seen or what you have learned about disabled people from society, I can only imagine it's not very pleasant or empowering or uplifting. You only have to look at any like disabled social media stars, people, anyone who's sharing their story, and just the trolling and just their existence is just diminished so much. So although I've only just kind of started sharing like my story in the past, I don't know, in my later years.
2 years? Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up thinking all of these negative things, like saying I couldn't say that I'm disabled until about 3 years ago because there was so many connotations and so many like negative things implied just with the word. It's like, oh my god, don't say that. Like, no, I don't see you as that. And it's like, okay, well, it's just a word. It's inherently neutral. All of these negative things that that you're implying with the word disabled has been learned. And you know, I really, really, I believe to my core that I was a burden, that I was not good enough, that no one could ever want to choose me, that I was a freak. I was just like, it was so crushing. And when I was actually sitting in by the Wanaka tree in New Zealand, and I had just done it was just over a year of going traveling, and that was something that was so huge because I was like, oh, disabled people don't get to travel, like disabled people can't do that, I can't do that. And then I did it. And it was hard, and I learned and unlearned so much. But it was at that point I was sitting next to the Wanaka tree, and I like to call it my epiphany. But I was like, wow.
You had a moment.
Yeah, I was like, I don't have to believe any of that stuff. And I'm getting goosebumps now because it was like the first time that I had like felt that to my core. I was like, I can unsubscribe from that and I can write my own narrative. And I was just, I was like, why do I believe all these things when I'm literally living my own life that's completely different? Like, I am good enough. I have amazing friends. I was traveling with friends. Like, just, I was doing so many things that was contradicting what I believed at my core to be true. And all those things were really, really hurting me.
And do you think, like, we're just going back to the word for a second, the word disabled, is it that people try to avoid it because they think that it's offensive, or they just avoid it because they don't really know anything, so they're just like, oh no.
So from my personal experience, I never wanted to identify with I never wanted to have that label, because it felt like defeat to all of these things. Because like the idea to me of saying I am disabled was saying I am not good enough. I don't belong within society. I don't have the same opportunities as anyone else. I don't like it. It felt like I was, and I had because my disability was the thing that made me feel othered. All those years growing up, and I was the outlier kind of thing. It was like almost kind of like a defense thing. I was like, well, I can't associate with that, because then I merge I wanted it to be, this thing has really, really put me in a lot of hurtful situations, so I don't want anything to do with that. So I couldn't, and there was a lot of pain and negativity associated with the word for me in my experience. But then nobody, like, I go back to, there's just such a lack of representation, and going out with my like personal pain back to society, it's like, okay, there's nobody else here like me. I'm the weirdo. Like, I need to hide. So yeah, it was just like a complete dissociation, and I didn't want to like feel that like oppressed and othered, and like discounted. It was like like, oh, there's special rules for you. I was like, I don't want special rules. I just want to, for once in my life, play the game. Yeah,
and
just and
like,
yeah,
that must have affected like your self-esteem quite a lot.
Okay, it's back. It froze there.
Yeah, we're back on. So
yeah.
I was saying that must have affected your self-esteem quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, even the perception people have around the word itself.
Yeah.
I know in myself that I wouldn't say that I'm an expert or anything, but I just know kind of what goes on when the word is mentioned. Sometimes it's like, it's like people are pretending it's not, just kind of, oh, let's just ignore it.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is. It's, people pretend that it doesn't exist, or like, people don't care. I shouldn't say that. People, it's difficult. yeah. Well, I should say that was just the start of a sentence, but I'll change it. A lot of people don't have the capacity to. Care is a strong word, but a lot of people don't have the capacity to learn about something that doesn't affect them. But
yes.
It's frustrating when it is such a huge part of the world population. I forget what the number is, but there's a wild amount of, a wild percentage of people in the world who are disabled. And even something like not having a ramp to go into a building, what message does that give to you? If there's no toilet that's accessible on the same floor where you're having a dinner in a restaurant that you can't get in because there's 3 stairs outside, the message is you're not welcome here. And even putting this information online, like, usually if I'm going somewhere new, I always ask, whoever I'm going with, have you been before? Is there any stairs? How many stairs are there? Is the toilet up the stairs? And if not, you can't find out online. You have to call up and say, hi, basically, am I welcome here? And then the chances are probably not. So yeah, it is. It's like unwelcome. It's pretend it doesn't exist. There's so many people that just ridicule disability. Treating disabled people like children is another. It's like a huge thing. You know, sometimes I'll sit. Sometimes I'll be in my wheelchair if I'm going to the airport with my friend will be pushing me. I'll be like pulling the bag, she's pushing me. And we go and talk about the assistance because I get assistance for flying. And the person behind the desk, 9.5 times out of 10, will have a conversation with my friend that's pushing me. And they'll say, can she walk? Can she? So it's like I'm completely invisible. Completely invisible. And that, like you said, your self-esteem
it's like I'm sitting here, like, I'm looking at you.
And it's not even like they've tried, like, because, maybe I wouldn't be able to answer the question for myself, but they don't even try. Like, it's just like, okay, you're an issue that I have to deal with, so I'm going to talk to your friend who's not an issue. Like, that's how it feels. And, you know, like, so many people have, when we've been traveling around, I've said to my friend, if she's pushing me in the wheelchair, they say, "Oh, you're such a good friend." And it just goes straight to my heart. And it's like, I internalize that as, because I don't deserve friends, because I'm a burden, I'm a pain, I'm a problem that needs to be dealt with. And that goes back to like all those times where, you know, I wasn't in the same situation as like the normal kids or whatever. Who else has to take a year off high school to have 2 spinal surgeries? Like
the lack of knowledge and understanding is quite visible.
Yeah.
And I think, like we mentioned, if it doesn't affect someone, it's very rare that they'll show any interest on it.
Yeah. And it's something like pre-healing my own trauma, I would be angry about it, and it would make me upset. And now I can have compassion for that, and I can see it from the perspective of it's like a switch from no one cares to like people don't have the capacity, and that's like my own mindset switch.
Definitely. There was another word I wanted to ask you. Can't pronounce it. Jesus Christ. Ableism. Is that right?
Yeah.
Ableism. Yes, I got it.
Yeah.
What is that?
Ableism.
Now you're talking to someone who has no knowledge of this, so.
Okay. So ableism, I find it difficult to put a definition of, but it's basically discrimination of disabled people, and that can occur in so many ways. You know, it's ableist for a building to not be accessible, and it's ableist to not have the accessibility information on your website or whatever. Ableism kind of comes into the it's more to do with like the social model of disability. So the medical model, which is what I grew up in, is focusing on you, like the patient with the problem is the problem, and you are something that needs to be fixed, i.e. you're broken. You need work done. So everything is sort of like, so take the restaurant for example. If there's only like 10 stairs to get in, and you're not able to go up the stairs. Yeah, the medical model of disability is more, you're the problem, you're disabled, you can't go in there. Whereas the social model looks at it from the complete opposite point of view. Like, I am a person I am allowed to go in there just as much as anyone else, but the barrier is that there isn't an entrance for me. So that's ableism in its simplest form. It's like when there's barriers, and it can be.
So
it's
more like what is barriers that would prevent other people from taking part.
Yeah.
On any.
In one form of it, there's a lot of.
Yeah.
There's, it can be. Ableism can be in speech as well, because if you use generalizing sweeping statements like everyone can do this, that's ableist, because you're like, if it's okay, back to the restaurant. If you say everyone can just climb the stairs to get in, the entrance is upstairs, so everyone can just go up there. That's ableist, because it's discounting the disabled population. I'm trying to think of a better example. Yeah. So it's like layered in so many things, it's like accessibility, it's the way you speak, it's like the
example you used at the airport.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's like your acknowledgement of an entire group of the population.
Great. Another thing I was looking at. Sorry,
I'm just going to say there's a lot of resources on social media who do a more detailed explanation of what that. So if you are interested, just have a search. I feel like I've not done it justice there, but yes, it's a really big topic.
I didn't know anything about it, but I think you helped me understand some of it.
Yeah,
it's a good start.
Yeah, and it's so interweaved like with everything. But at the bottom line, it's discrimination.
And tell me about another thing. I was looking at your social media, and you were talking about grief and grief of your mother.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned not this year, but prior to that, you used to struggle with it.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back a little bit further. I was 12 when my dad died. It was really sudden, and it was, I don't know, it's like hard to remember a lot of it. It's 20 years ago next year. Which is wild to me. Like, it's something I'm like, what? But anyway, so that was obviously a huge part of my life. Like, from 12, my dad died just out of the blue. So that, I'm trying to think what I want to talk about. It was really difficult because my dad was like, I don't know, it's kind of sad to say, but he was like the fun one when we were kids. Like, not that my mum wasn't fun, but he was like a huge part of like joy, and he was just funny, like just like an absolute joker. Yeah, and then just going like there one day, like not within, I don't know, just gone so quickly, and then not knowing like how to process that. Yeah, I really struggled. And then 10 years after was when my mum passed. And I think the main difference in the grieving process with the two is obviously age. But my mum was a solo parent for those 10 years. So in those 10 years when I was like, I had a lot of surgeries, I had a lot of stuff going on, like with my own health. So so we ended up, I'm so grateful, because we ended up like best friends. And I remember saying that to her when she was in end of life care. I was just distraught. I'm such an emotional person. I would just cry at everything. Every day I would have to, the nurse would be like, try and not cry today because it makes her feel sad. And I'm like,
can't help it.
Yeah, like, you're my best friend too. I'm sorry, I'm crying. I'm just really sad. But yeah, so my journey with grief has been one where I just was so consumed by it. I almost was resigned to the fact that part of me just always had to be sad. And part of me was never going to experience the full spectrum of joy. And because I had felt so much grief, I made the connections and, convinced myself. I was like, anything that I love is going to either leave me or die. So I put a massive wall around myself, which I'm still in the process of getting down. But
one wall at a time.
It has come down a lot. But so I completely detached from like almost everything, everyone, and I was just couldn't let anyone in because I was so scared to lose. So I just felt pain. I'm definitely a highly sensitive person, and I think not knowing what that was, and it was never empowered to be like, no, I am sensitive and I do feel things really, really deeply. And I was always kind of like, oh, she's crying again, or I would make up names for like emotional Emily, anxious Annie, for when I'm having these big emotions, and I'm like, this is really, really, really intense, and I don't know how to be relatable, so I'll just give myself like a anxious Annie, emotional Emily. So yeah, just feeling the sadness, like, and I just.
And were you always kind of the sadness itself? Obviously, at the time you didn't. Well, you knew you had sadness, but were you always kind of drawn to that sadness? It's like any attempt, it just brings you back there.
Yeah. And then if I was having a good time, or if I did feel happy, it was like, oh well, you can't, like, you need to be in pain. Because, and it was like, it was kind of half guilt, like, how can I be happy when all these absolutely terrible things have happened? But it was also like it was partly like a trauma response. It was like, stay safe in the sadness, because that's something that I've always kind of done, like, especially with being disabled as well. They kind of like link in here, because I would always make sure that, because I was so sensitive about being different, and that being pointed out, I would always make sure that I was the nastiest and I would say the worst things about myself, so that if anyone else, because it's really common for people to say things to you like that. So I would always make sure that I had my own narrative that was the worst, that, like, I would say awful things about myself as a defense, so that if somebody else would say something, I was like, okay, well, I've hurt myself more. And that,
it's like that, if I just beat myself up, the rest wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, it's like, well, you can't touch me, because it's like that element of control as well. And that was the same with the sadness. I was like, okay, well, if part of me, and I wouldn't say that I was consciously doing it, but now looking back, it was, okay, if I feel a low level of this horrific pain all of the time, then I know what it's going to be like. So I'm not going to get as much of a shock when something else bad happens or when I feel this sad again. So yeah, it was definitely just always drawn back to it.
Yeah, it could be very difficult. It can be very difficult. In relation, so I'm gonna go. I keep going back to things we talk about. There was a post you put up online where you speak about, I think this is back in 2021. You were at a hostel and you're talking to a lady who noticed that, who I think she asked you the question like, when will you be recovered? Something like that.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned on there that it made you feel like that you weren't like a problem to be fixed.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to pinpoint the exact one because it happens all the time.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah. So the sentiment with that is ableist because there's a general idea within society that if you're in a wheelchair or if you use crutches or if you have a disability, you should be old. It's like a lot of people say like, oh, you're too pretty to be in a wheelchair. Like, the two can coexist. So yeah, the frustration that I felt with that was get well soon culture. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but I used to like not everyone's
it
getting
is in a way.
better. Yeah, and it's like not everyone is getting better, and it just. I was a lot angrier back then in 2021, so but I still
you can be angry now.
Yeah, for sure. I still stand by it, and I think now at this point in my life, I'm in a lot less situations where I'm coming like face to face with. Because when I was traveling, I was obviously like getting things all the time, and just it really wore me down. But now at this point, having just moved home and sort of setting things up again, I'm not in a situation where I'm coming face to face with like new people all the time. But yeah, and there is just like oh, what's happened to you? Oh, I broke my leg last year too. Oh yeah, my granny, she's got a broken hip. And I'm like, I don't care about your granny, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, so it's like, oh, you're like, and now
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the whole get well thing. I think people just say it out of, I don't know, we just say it because we think it's the right thing to say.
Yeah. And
it might not be the right thing to say. And perhaps maybe we're afraid of where the conversation's going to go.
Well, that is like the $1 million like yin and yang, the balance. It's like, do you just say something like because is someone just saying something because it's verbal diarrhea, they don't know what it is to say, or do they actually genuinely care? And I have a rule, I don't, because I could, if I had a penny for every time someone asked me what's wrong with you or what happened to you, I would never have to work again. And it used to really, really like irk me, and it still does some days now. It doesn't have as much of an emotional charge as it used to, but I have a rule. It's like, if you don't even know my name, I'm not telling you what's happened to me. And it's just like, people are just so nosy. Like, this is ableism as well. Like, I don't owe you my medical history. Like, why are you asking me? And like, what like you were saying about you don't know where the conversation's going to go. Like, some people who have medical conditions or use a walking aid or medical mobility aid, they've had really, really traumatic things happen to them, and then they're being asked 6 times a day, what happened? Oh, what happened to you? Oh, you're too pretty to be in a wheelchair. No. Oh, you've got such good friends. Like, it's just, it's It can be frustrating, yeah. And you just, and 9 times out of 10, the frustration for me comes when I just want to exist. Like, I don't owe anyone anything, and I'm working on myself, and I'm, like, it's
prior to you starting doing that, like I mentioned, it is very difficult.
Oh yeah, and it used to upset, and it's just the reminder of like the main trigger. Like, I'm different, I don't fit in, nobody wants me. What's wrong with you? Like, it just like triggers that core wound. So yeah, before I had done any healing on that, I would like. It would depend on what day of the week it was as well. Sometimes I would tell someone, and then I would say, "Oh, I have chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy," and then they'd be like,
what?
Yeah. And then sometimes I would just make, my favourite thing to do at one point was make up a story. I would just say, "Oh, I actually have hockey sticks for legs." Just like be as off the wall as I could think of on the spot. And then again, they're just like, "What?" And then other times I would try and educate them and say, "Okay, I'm not going to answer your question, but I will take 5 minutes to tell you why it's not something that you can always bank on being a good thing to ask." Or sometimes that was received it is 100% lack of awareness and lack of education. But it's not always the person it's not always, like, I fully believe that it's not always my responsibility to educate. And sometimes I'm allowed to be pissed off. Oh,
yes.
Sorry, I don't know.
Yes. It's up to ourselves to understand more, and we avoid it unless it matters to us. I find like there's a lot of stuff happening. People just kind of turn a blind eye until it's happening closer to them. Then you're like, "Oh my God, you know about this?" You're like, "It's been happening for so long."
But again, that is also like a trauma response. That is like a protection. That is like they don't have the capacity. I mean, I understand sometimes there will be like ignorance, and like it's not always like genuinely don't have the capacity to take it on. But I really believe that there is a lot of like trauma responses linked into that. It's like ultimate global dissociation.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And how did you get into the Awaken Breathwork?
So
how did you come across it?
So just to kind of tie in before Awaken. So after my epiphany, when I was in my camper van, beside the tree, when I was like, "Oh, I don't have to believe this. I don't have to live my life in this way, blah, blah, blah." I, from there, went on a massive unlearning, like, intellectually. So I completely changed my social media feeds. I've followed all new people who I just resonated with their content that was so educational and just like relatable to me. I had counselling sessions with a disabled counsellor, just like it was like falling into the the wave on the other side of like, I don't want anything to do with this part of me. Don't even say that word to me. To like, okay, well, how do I like unlearn all that? And I did like, I did the like just reading a lot and connecting with people, a complete new community, an amazing community online. So that was kind of.
And was that a way of you trying to not get answers, but that's the only thing I can think of. Was that way of you trying to get more answers for yourself, or did you just kind of just go on a journey to like, I need to learn as much as I can?
It was kind of like, the best way that I could describe it is I had this epiphany, of I don't need to believe those things, but I had nobody else that I was like, is there
Talking
anybody?
that language,
Yeah, I was like, is there anybody else who also is disabled but doesn't believe these things? So that was when what I kind of went searching for, and in that learned that there's people that are like, yes, like welcome, welcome.
It's like, come on in.
Better late than never. Yeah. So that was that, and it was a lot of, it was like it was really healing to see like, okay, this is possible, because you know, I had just made this decision. I was like, okay, I'm not going to believe that I'm not good enough just because I wear splints now. But I was like, how, like, is this actually possible? Are there other people who have chronic conditions, disabilities, who know that they're queens? That's what I wanted.
Yes, I want that feeling too.
Yeah. So that, I was doing that for maybe, I don't know, say like a year and a half, 2 years. And then I'll never forget this, because my best friend, one of my best friends that I was traveling with, she said, I was feeling like really content, and I was like, I've done so well. I'm not hiding anymore. Like I had a blog, and I was like sharing my truth, whatever you want to call it. And she said to me one day, she was like, I'm really excited to see where you go next, like see what you do next. And I was like, are you kidding me on? Because I've just spent the last year and a half, 2 years unlearning all of this, and now it's still not enough. And then now looking back, I'm so glad that she said it to me, because when I found Breathwork, which was a complete nudge from the universe, I could see that instead of like, so I had like gone from being completely disowning this huge part of who I am, what just my existence, to, okay, now I have to accept all of it and disown all of the bad things that was associated with over this side. And I was completely over here. And with her saying that to me now, I can see that I was here. And then breathwork has allowed me to come to the middle. And I'm like, okay, well, everything is nothing and nothing is everything. Like, I'm just like, in the grand scheme of things, it really, really doesn't matter at all. Like, I just came here for, like, in this body for so many reasons that I'm still learning over, like, continuously. And I'm just like, okay, we picked a tough ride, but we got this.
Better start doing something. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a complete, I actually watched Jake Paul, the YouTuber, and I saw Lucas Mack. I saw this heavily tattooed guy on Jake Paul's vlogs. That's my guilty pleasure. I like watching Jake Paul's vlogs. Yeah, I saw this heavily tattooed guy, and I thought, who's that? What are they doing? Then I went down the Instagram hole, saw Lucas, saw Hella, saw Awaken, and then they have these like amazing promotional like videos from like in the breathwork experiences. So this time it was like when we were in lockdown, or just after, I think. But I was in Australia, and they had this offer. They were doing 2 classes, one before Christmas, one after New Year. And I was going back and forward on it, and I was like, am I just doing this because he's friends with Jake Paul, or am I just because like, but like I
free offer.
really went back and forth. No, so it was a fair amount of money. And I really sat with it, and I was like going back and forward, and then I thought, do you know what? I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna get these 2 sessions for myself as a Christmas present to myself. And I never looked back. So even from the get go, like in that workshop, I just had a out of this world experience. And it was I had done so much healing intellectually. And then it just started me on my journey of being able to go back to like all of those core wounds and like basically start again from when I was a kid, and like bring healing and bring love and bring love to all of those times when I believed that I wasn't enough. And that's like to have a modality where you can go back and do that for yourself, where it's your own breath. Yes, there can be a facilitator with you, or you can be in a group, whatever, but you're in control. You're leading your own breath. It's just like, it blows my mind every time. Yes.
And for you, when you did your first session, was it a case like, oh my God, what is this? It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and it was like, wow. But it was also, this is good. And I think I did a few more of their, I did a few more of their workshops online. And then they announced that they were going to be doing a facilitator training. So part of my like story, like the story of what disabled people can and can't do, was I have to be grateful for any job that I have, because so I always worked in offices, and I really was resigned to like, this is the rest of my life, and I should be grateful that I can work, because so many like disabled people are left out and don't have that opportunity. So I had always just worked in offices, and I've been so lucky, like I've travelled and worked in a lot of different countries, and again like gone into office roles and things. And I've completely lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, so I applied to the facilitator training.
Yes.
And then I thought, there's no way that I'm going to get in. I had never done anything in the like wellness and holistic care, and I had only done a couple of breathwork classes myself. And then the application was due on my dad's birthday, so I sent the application in, and I was like, okay, may it be. And then I got accepted, and then we did. So it was 9 months of training with our own breathwork journey for the facilitators every 2 weeks, and we went to the depths of the existence of our souls.
Those scary parts.
Yes, those parts that are well and truly shoved down, and it's been so freaking healing. Like it's hard for me to put into words like what breathwork has done for me. And I was in that container with like so many other people. Not one single one of us had the same story, and I've seen the healing that it's had for every single one of them as well. It's just it's just the talk therapy and the more like traditional modalities at the moment, they have been amazing, and they appeared for me exactly when I needed it. But being able to get out of your head and into your body, and I think we just constantly are learning more and more about how intelligent our bodies are. It's just wild.
Yeah. And for you, obviously, the time it takes a person to get from here to there, it's different. It's different for everyone. And for you, when you started to notice the difference in yourself, was it just you obviously had that excitement, like, oh my God, I can't wait to do this again?
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah, for sure. But it definitely comes in waves, like because you can like uncover or get to the depths that are so deep and things that your rational brain just has no concept of, like because you go into your subconscious, you're dealing with things that exist outside your operating system daily. So you can like there's just so many possible outcomes from a breathwork journey that you do need that time to like integrate
sit
and
down
bring
with
it bring it into like this body and this timeline, so that you can integrate the things that you've learned or the insights that you've had, so that, well, otherwise it's just a nice experience if you don't integrate it. But it is exciting when you can start to see changes in yourself. And I never for 1 second ever in my life thought I would be self-employed. Like it was not within my awareness that was an opportunity or like something that I could create for myself. Like it's wild.
That's the beauty of trying to unlearn things. And when you start becoming curious and started questioning a lot of things.
Yeah, it's frozen there.
That's the beauty of when you start to unlearn things and start questioning things in a different way.
Yeah.
And start watching and listening to different things, and all of a sudden like new doors open, and they all don't come in at once. You do this and the next one comes, and and you just that's the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going back
if you get it all once, you'll be like, whoa, not for me. It's like, not doing that. Yeah. So you have to go through the little things and
and going back to those like scales as well, because when I'm talking about breathwork, I'm like, like all these things have happened for me. Like so I forgot that you had asked me a question about the grief, like the difference within this year. We actually lost one of our he was just an absolute angel on this earth. Our friend Ari, who was also in the Awaken container, and he like processing his like my grief for him after being in that container is just completely
different.
Yeah, and it's like the learnings are like astronomically different, and freeing and bringing love to that part of myself that always had to be sad as like a defense barrier, allowing it to feel love. Like if it hadn't all come in the times that it needed to, there's no way that I would have even been able to like, because your intellectual mind would be like, what, that doesn't make sense. Like, no, there's no way you can get to this point from here. So when you do work with somatic practices like breathwork, it's you receive the intelligence that your body-mind system is ready for at that exact time. And and it does it a lot of the time it doesn't make logical sense because it's way beyond what your brain can process.
Like your mind doesn't understand what's going on. So yeah. And when you're dealing with the emotions, especially grief, it's a large emotion, and you can't like your head can't get you around that. You have to
and it can be so many different things as well, because like grief can be layered within sadness, but also anger is a huge one. So if you take someone who's dealing with a lot of anger and then show them this version of themselves that's in control of that, like it doesn't make sense to. So you have to kind of get on the train and go in that process, and like sometimes it'll be a bit of a roller coaster, but I just can't my heart
it's changed my life.
Stands out. Like it's just so freeing to liberate yourself.
And what's been the biggest learning for you?
Oh. This is a hard question. I'd say
It is. I'll ask you a different question. What sort of advice would you give someone that's obviously not in your shoes, but similar situation?
I think the answer to both of those questions is the tagline for what I'm all about is start believing in you, not what anyone else thinks. So stop letting those external influences into your little heart and just let your heart out. And it's when you can lead with your heart, it's freaking scary, but it's so worthwhile. It is. Yeah, it's so scary. And also, just to add in as well, I'm not claiming that I'm this guru and I've got it all down. Like I'm like going through it as well, but I'm committed to sticking with it and, continuing to peel back the layers. So yeah, I just want to like put that out there. That I'm always learning and I always want to learn. And yeah, this is a huge journey for me too. Yeah. So like I'm not some like person who's going to tell you from a place of you should
I haven't
do
figured
this.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose this kind of work, there's no really. You don't get to the end of it. You just learn more, and the more you learn about yourself, new things come up. There's still. It's just a journey that just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, I remember a little nugget a little gem that was like a huge moment for me when I felt like I had done all this healing on, say, someone asking me, "Oh, what happened to you?" Like I've not, and then it happens again, and you're like, "Oh, I thought I had fixed this," and then, but like when you get over the other side of that, it's like, okay, the universe isn't going to take these situations away from you. Like it's inevitable that it is likely going to happen again. But what changes is how you have the like emotional reaction or like the physical reaction to like to what it is. Like the thing that's happening is likely going to continue, but what changes is how you feel about it and how much impact it's having on your body and the physiological changes that are happening when it does happen.
The reaction, because like someone, for example, can say something, say last year that would have made you feel like not good, and then now they can say the same thing. You're just like, all right.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Just like, okay. Just the reaction changes. But yes, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's worthwhile. It's a journey worth taking. And I have 3 more questions for you. And what's one thing you're proud of?
I am proud of my like determination and strength of getting like related to my body. Like this was it's hard to put into words like how much self-loathing I actually had, and I really thought that I was completely invaluable because my body works a little bit different. And I'm really, really proud that I've had the strength to, like, because it in this day and age, it is an act of defiance to love yourself. Like it's just not, it's not done enough. So
No.
So going from that little girl who didn't only not love herself but thought she could never be loved by anyone, to now actively, accepting love and giving love and receiving love, and just being in my heart as much as I can. Like I'm really proud of that.
Definitely. And my last question, you mentioned that your father was fun. So tell me what you like to do for fun.
Oh, so
Except
during
what, traveling anyway.
yeah, well, I like to travel, but during my pre starting my healing sort of thing, I always said I couldn't draw and I wasn't artistic and I'm not creative and all those things. Like, I'm not this, I'm not that. But then during my journey of like rediscovering play and like getting into a flow state, and I freaking love painting now. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love painting. I love drawing. I have an iPad, so I have like Procreate. I do the little tutorials, like just follow the steps. I love getting paints out. I love singing. I really need to get back into singing because that's another
form of expression.
Yeah, and it's that's something that I definitely want to get into. So I'd say, and I love listening to music. Like when I go for a walk and listen to music. I think it's just freeing. And then all the classic things, like I really do actually love meditating now.
Yes. Quiet the mind. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's that alone is a challenge.
Yeah. That was a process too.
Yeah. It's like, wait, what's this? And then so your breath work, are you doing like this individual? Are you doing group sessions, or how does that work?
Yeah, so at the moment I don't have like a permanent address. I'm just kind of floating around. So I am working online. So I have online sessions available. My like scheduling situation is not up and fully functional yet. So yeah, you can like for sessions you can send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. And at the moment they would be online unless it is it suits both of us for me to come to you. And then in the new year, I'm hoping to have, well, hopefully before the new year, but I'm hoping to have a bit more of a permanent address, and then I'll get a little studio up and running.
And online, what is your online?
So
I know I found you online, but what is it online?
So it's at Darling Breathe. Darlin, like DARLIN. Darlin. Like darling without
There's no G.
No G.
Without a G. Darling Breathe.
Yeah, in Scotland, we say Darlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a quick review on my Facebook page, Don't Be Afraid to Talk, or DM me on Instagram. The show notes will include all of the relevant links from today's episode. If you haven't already, please download, leave a rating, and share with your friends. You might just reach that person who needs to hear this message. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I am James Lumumba, signing off with gratitude.